like to start off this video with a confession because there was a time when I thought I had forsaken the love of reading and writing. And that sentiment alone was as tragic as it was mistaken. And turns out it wasn't reading that I hated, it was just that I hadn't found stories that I connected to. And my reawakening of passion for the written word came through a series of formidable repute, the Stormlight Archive. It was in the words of the first book of the series, The Way of Kings, that I fell in love with storytelling once again, and I'm convinced that by the end of this video, you will be in search of a copy to read for yourself. So today, I want to dissect what renders The Way of Kings such an unforgettable narrative. So whether you're here to determine whether this book is right for you, or you just want to hear a fan gush about her new favorite series, I invite you to journey with me into Roshar. And let's unravel why this saga altered the course of my own literary world, and why it might alter yours as well. World building is something that's difficult to avoid when discussing any of Brandon Sanderson's novels, I've been told, and I think that Roshar was the perfect place and the perfect introduction into just how immersive the world building experience can be when given the proper time and care in fantasy novels. To me, I felt like throughout the story, Roshar was a character in its own right. It is a living, breathing entity within the story. And while the learning curve is quite steep, there's a lot that makes this world different from our own. I still feel like there were enough grounding details to make the story relatable, and a lot of this information and kind of world building was sprinkled throughout the course of the narrative as you kind of explore these different regions of Roshar, so you don't feel like you're getting smacked in the face with just info dumping, which I really enjoyed about the story itself. Now, there's two things that really piqued my interest when it came to the setting of Roshar. The first being Highstorms. I have to talk about Highstorms because I feel like this was an amazing plot device, not only in presenting an interesting kind of natural element to the world that makes it different from our own, but also in unifying the entire expansive narrative of The Way of Kings. It's kind of this constant unifying challenge that all of the characters must face and deal with in these deep and varied ways. One of the truly magical features of these Highstorms is its ability to really thread through the plot and ground the reader in a familiarity. It's something you can kind of cling to, and understanding that no matter where you're at in Roshar, no matter which character's point of view you're reading from, Highstorms are a part of their daily life. Everything in this story is affected by the Highstorms that travel through Roshar, and so it's something that you know is going to be a present challenge no matter which character's point of view you're reading from. The second thing I want to talk about when it comes to world building in this series is actually the Spren. I feel like it is difficult to talk about Stormlight Archives without talking about Spren. It really gives the story this ethereal, magical, whimsical feel, and lends to the fantastical elements of your setting. I really loved the idea of having things like glory and fear Spren that appear based on the character's emotions and the different ways that that was used throughout the story. So the Spren are tied to elemental and emotional forces like fear, glory, wind, flame. There's all of these different classifications of Spren, and they all have a different look and feel to them. One of the things I really loved about the use of Spren is that it added a depth and complexity to character interactions, because there's things that were difficult for them to hide as they interact with each other, and makes their emotional state much more tangible to other characters around them. Now, if I had just one gripe about the world building in the story, and it's really not that big of a critique, this is probably not something that others are too concerned about when reading this book. This is probably just me being me and looking for there to be significance in every single little detail of what I'm reading. And one of those was the idea of women covering one of their hands. And the whole time I was reading this story, I was like, there has to be more to this. I was terrified to look this up on the wiki because I was like, I don't want to spoil anything that's potentially important. I got about halfway through the story and I was like, you know what, if this doesn't have a payoff and I just spend the entire time I'm reading this story or listening to the story, thinking about safe hands and the possible significance of why they exist, I am, like, it was just too distracting at that. According to the wiki, it's just a part of the world building, it's just a part of their culture. It felt silly. I felt rather foolish for spending so much time crafting theories as to why safe hands were such a significant part of the story. But let's move on from environment and world building, because for me to be really invested in a story, there has to be good characters. And the characters in The Way of Kings are probably some of the most interestingly complex and relatable characters that I've come across in a very long time. First, meet Kaladin. He is stripped of pretty much everything. He's lost his freedom, he's lost his family, and he's even lost his will to fight. I think what elevates Kaladin's character arc in this narrative is not merely his growing in strength to become the hero of the story, but his relentless perseverance despite insurmountable odds. What we see is not the story of a man gaining magical abilities and suddenly becoming the hero of our story. But what we see instead is a simple shift in his perspective and his willingness to help others, and that is the true transformation that he undergoes throughout the course of this story. Another strong male lead that we come across in this story is Dalinar. I love Dalinar. I love Dalinar. He's like the Ned Stark of this story. He is very set in his ways. He has a mission and he's going to accomplish it, and he's going to hold to his honor and strength no matter what happens. There's something I love about characters that are like undoubtedly dangerous and strong, that everyone's kind of like, I don't know, I think he might have gone soft. He might be a little weak, you know, he's not quite the Blackthorn that he used to be. Just showing up and proving everyone wrong, that I just love. There's something about that character trope that just gets me every time. I absolutely love it. And Dalinar is a fantastic example of this being used in a really fun way. Even he himself questions if he's gone mad throughout the course of the story. And then there's our leading lady, Shallan. I have to admit, I was not a fan of Shallan in this story. This could be because she is not so much unlike myself, and I think if I were ever to come face to face with another one of me, I would be quite annoyed as well. That is not to say that I have gone through the exact same things that Shallan had. There was something about this sweet little sheltered child going out into the world and being confronted with all sorts of things that she was not ready to learn. I had an unsettling connection with. She experienced a lot of things that I felt like I experienced in my life, coming from a very conservative, sheltered home and then venturing forth into the world. And you know, there were some lessons that she was learning in this story that I think I was just not really ready to be confronted with or acknowledge, and so I was not very fond of Shallan in this story. It's not to say that I hated every time Shallan was, you know, in the book. But I do think that there were some truths that she was facing that I was perhaps not ready to hear. I was often annoyed by her character in the same way one would probably be annoyed by a younger version of themselves. But it did not ruin the story for me. It's not that she's irredeemable. I love her now. The character arc that she went through in the second book was fantastic and amazing. Brandon Sanderson's brilliance in these characters is not only in creating these extremely relatable characters, but I think where he really shines is in crafting characters that you wholeheartedly want to believe in and want to see become victorious in their different struggles. The emotional aspect of the characters really tether the story to a reality that makes the book a page turner. It makes you want to keep reading, to see your favorite characters in this story, whoever that may be, win against the odds. My last kind of note about what makes the story so unforgettable is the twist. There's a definitive skill that Sanderson is able to present, and that is the ability to hide the mystery of what's going on in the story until the very final bits of the arc, in which everything kind of comes together. There were a couple twists in this story, I would say. Some of them I saw coming from very early on in the story. For whatever reason, I have a mind that is able to unravel mysteries very well. Was a fun little surprise in that there were so many little things threading together throughout the course of the story that I just could not guess them all. There were some that I was able to predict, but for the most part, I was left surprised, and it was something that I don't get to experience a lot when reading and when watching stories, whether that be, you know, playing a video game, watching a movie, whatever it is. So I really did enjoy being thoroughly surprised by some of the mysteries in the novel. To wrap things up, I think I just want to touch on the fact that there are several reasons why you might choose not to read The Way of Kings. You might be super busy in life, where you are already drowning in work, maybe dealing with little ones that take up a majority of your time. You might also doubt your affinity for fantasy and being able to take on these fantasy stories, or you might find that such a behemoth of a book is a bit of a daunting task to take on. And if you find yourself in this boat, I would just offer you a piece of advice coming from Sanderson himself in The Way of Kings, and that is life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. Life is invariably filled with chaos and complication. There will often be more work than there are hours in the day, and unexpected obstacles will undoubtedly arise, making your own path seem insurmountable at times. And in this unpredictable and wild journey of life that we are all on at the moment, there are very few times when you will be gifted the opportunity to lose yourself in a story that reignites your sense of wonder, instills hope, and encourages you to celebrate triumphs, not just for the characters themselves, but also for you, the reader, as you journey alongside them. And so I challenge you all to give yourselves this gift. Embrace the indulgence of getting lost in a world that challenges and changes you. You'll find that the journey is often immensely more rewarding than the destination. And along the way, you might just discover new things about yourself and how you perceive life. The path of The Way of Kings is indeed a long one, but I can say with confidence that it is worth every step.